through this project, the Prayer Mat project, where everybody got to share, should we say, their messages, their inspirations, and what it has done for the people out there. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Walaikum salam. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us this lovely Thursday afternoon here in Johannesburg. I hope the weather's doing you well there in Cape Town.
It's perfect. It's a bit windy, but it's great.
It always is, eh? They always call it the windy city.
Yeah, exactly.
Are you doing well today, Aaliyah?
I am. I'm a bit tired, but I'm well, alhamdulillah.
That's good. Shukr. We're so looking forward to your sharing your experience with us. Now, talk to us a little bit about yourself.
So I graduated last year with an honors in curatorship from the Michaela School of Fine Art, which is UCT's art school.
Mm-hmm.
And ever since then, I've basically just been trying to do internships and broaden my experience in the art industry. And yeah, it was through my honors thesis that this project actually started and continues today.
Right. So talk to us about the project. I think, I find it such a phenomenal idea, going out there and creating awareness through a prayer mat. I mean, nobody would have thought about such a phenomenal idea.
Yeah, so exactly. So for my honors thesis, we had to focus on an object study. And an object study is basically an analysis of an object which sheds light onto broader social, political, cultural issues, either based in specific communities or society as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, looking at how objects tell stories about people, or how we can tell new stories through objects, taking the emphasis away from people-centered and the politics within, retelling other people's stories or representing other people. So I think objects just make it a bit more of a safe space when telling narratives about people or certain events. And going through, trial and error of different objects that I, wanted to choose, I remembered my own personal memory of this masala. And it was actually, this masala belonged to my grandmother who actually lived in Lenasia.
Wow.
And she had bought it, I think, from a merchant who was selling the newest sort of kitabs and masalas at the time. And I mean, as far as my own story, that's as much
and
as
I think
know.
So many of us relate to that. When you talk about a musala that's been passed on, I mean, I have one that my grandmother used to use. So I think it becomes an heirloom at some point.
Exactly. It's an heirloom, and it's something so mundane but has such sentimental value to the people or the owners of this masala. And I think that's what I saw through people who actually, through Facebook and Instagram, who contacted me, sharing their memories about this masala. And it actually, when Voice of the Cape had shared it on my behalf, it was actually through their platform that I received over like 100 comments of people just sharing their stories, their like emotions and sentiments to this masala. And like you said, it has a familial, generational connection. It deals with the pilgrimage of Hajj and Umrah. And then also, the loss that people faced when their parents or grandparents had passed on.
Mm-hmm.
But then, of course, there were stories that dealt with, their childhood memories or the imagination. So the project really brought out the diversity of the narratives through these comments that I received on Facebook and Instagram.
Yeah, and you're talking about diversity. This prayer mat, I think, is such a phenomenal idea because it reaches out to those non-Muslims as well. And it, I think, alleviates those misconceptions that people have and makes them understand the type of connection you have when you actually sit on that mat and what it means for you. Because that little mat goes literally everywhere.
Exactly. And I love that you said that, because when I obviously had to curate an exhibition around this masala, and I was thinking, how can I do that? And I'd actually then gotten about 23 masalas that people donated to the exhibition. And, having them on the floor, it allowed the viewers, who are obviously also non-Muslim, to, see the materiality of like the actual materiality of the masala. But it also allowed us to, yes, it was, a Muslim object, but this project, I think, dealt with the kind of hidden aspects of our essential humanness that transcend religion and ethnicity, like, for example, just like spirituality, emotions, senses, and memories. So I thought that was quite profound as well, purely because this deals with the Salah, which is fundamentally such an Islamic thing,
Yes.
but it transcended that. And I think it resonated for non-Muslims as well.
Yeah, and I would say it created a connection, because the thing is, we all pray in a different way. And I think it brought light to the subject of what it means for us, the connotation behind it. It's not just a prayer mat itself. Because when you get on there, it's the type of connection that you have with the Almighty. Whereas, other people, of course, go to a church and sit on a bench or whatever it is to pray. And I think it's such a great thing, because it's created this communication between Muslims and non-Muslims to be able to understand each other on a better space.
Exactly. And again, to show that there is similarity. So even in that space of the exhibition, people, even when they saw that prayer mat, they knew, okay, this is like a sacred space, and therefore they entered the space with respect, which I again thought was quite profound. Just to kind of show that, especially in South Africa, that's what makes us a great country, that there is that inherent respect for one another.
Yes.
So yeah.
Well, what sort of emotions did you find coming out of, obviously, people on a general consensus? It's such an amazing concept that you've come up with. Just the thought of it gets my mind going in many directions.
At the beginning, I had no idea to what extent this project would be a project. I was going into the unknown. I didn't actually know that by me, posing this question, do you recognize this masala with the actual picture?
Yes.
I mean, it could have been only two people in the world saying, yeah, I remember it. And then there goes my thesis, idea and just general project. So I personally was very taken aback by the fact that people who were strangers to me were extremely open to me. And then we're really sharing, stories that really varied from, people who are Muslim, not really practicing, but there's that sentimental value to it because when they got married, their mother-in-law gave it to them. And then there were also other stories where people speak about how, they saw their mother praying on that masala for increase in barakah, and then seeing that barakah, play out in their lives. And, a man spoke about how, Allah's rahmah and mercy. So it really just expanded in terms of its content and therefore the emotional relevance to each individual.
What did this mean for you?
I mean, it was an honor, I suppose, to represent the global Muslim community, if I could say that, because, again, I was very aware that, just in terms of the artwork that people do, it centers, Muslims, especially in Cape Town, around, Bukap or certain areas, and therefore it has certain connotations. And what I wanted to do was to actually show, the identity of a global community. And I was really, excited and pleased that I got to do that by having, Muslims from around the world participating. So I was extremely chuffed and honored, like I said, to bring a community together, even if it was virtually.
Yes. And I think that's what it's about, is being able to create this network through things like this, getting people together, creating the support structure and helping each other move forward in many directions. And I think this is one of the ways of which you looked at bringing people together and getting to understand each other also in a better light.
Exactly. And with curatorship, normally, the curator curates objects or artworks, but I think in my case, I was actually curating a community. And I think that's what was quite special about it.
And I think what was so phenomenal, it was also creating relationships out there. Because people were starting to connect through this, that's what I found so phenomenal about your project. It was that connection that you created. Besides all the other amazing things that came out of it, that connection between a Muslim and a non-Muslim, the connection between communities as such. So there's so much about it, just from the connection point of view.
Exactly. And again, it was very interesting how it happened organically. And again, I couldn't really, predetermine this. But it was, like you said, it really was great to see. Also just the openness that we do have as a community in general.
And it's so nice because, you know, just the other day we were talking about trying to create that Ubuntu and how much it's done through COVID-19 for us to be able to reflect. And I think projects like these, like yours, actually make people sit down, reflect, and try and reconnect in some way, to be able to understand each other better.
Exactly.
Yeah, you know, I was reading that you're the creative director of Hikayat, an online magazine that focuses on the stories and experiences of Muslim women from around the world. I think that's so phenomenal because it's also that creating that connection, but of course through a different version of doing things.
Exactly, yes. So we saw that there wasn't necessarily a space for that in terms of, you know, the digital magazines. And yes, of course, there are a lot of international online platforms.
Right.
But I think we wanted to just make it a bit more open because sometimes those become exclusive. And I think we wanted to, you know, I think a more sort of, if I could say this, you know, sort of African or African orientated platform.
Mm-hmm.
But then we'd actually realized that through the analytics, even though it was, you know, geared towards a sort of young Muslim, or not young, just a Muslim women community, we actually saw that men were actually reading it more than the women, and then we opened it up to
I think it's a good thing because they get to understand us better.
exactly 100%. We were quite shook,
I think
but
it's phenomenal because the thing is, you know, there's nothing like picking up a book and experiencing the experience of the person. They create this journey for you where you get better insight into who they really are. And I think this is probably what your book does, is make people focus on what women are made of and what their should you say identities are and what sort of phenomenal things they can do. Because I think a lot of the times the misconception is that, you know, yeah, this is a working woman and that's as far as it gets. But I think it brings out more the essence in everything, should we say.
No, 100%. And I think, you know, having said that, it's also interesting for us to see where men are at. You know, it's very rare that you'll, you know, have someone write, you know, a poem or sort of any sort of creative expression. So for me, that has been really interesting to read and just, you know, get a different perspective, which I think is always important.
Most definitely. Where to from here?
In terms of the project, I have actually applied for a grant to turn this project into a documentary because I think it would be more powerful when if I could film a few of the participants in this project, because I think, like I said earlier, there's such deep stories and emotions that come out, which I think, you know, a documentary will do it justice.
Oh, most definitely. And, you know, I think, like you say, you know, you want to, reading it is one thing, but painting that picture and showing it out there, the actual experience, has as much impact. And I think it's an amazing idea to actually turn this into a documentary. I think it will do phenomenally well.
Thank you so much. I hope I get the grant. I'm still waiting.
I'm going to be watching and waiting very anxiously to be able to see this, hoping to get involved as well from the Salam Media perspective. But
no, of course.
I think it's a phenomenal thing that you are doing, and especially with Hikayat as well. I mean, it's filling those little voids that people are missing out on, and helping each other reconnect through these types of mediums, and it's creating that support structure as well. If somebody reads a story about a woman that's done something phenomenal, and you know, it's similar to their experiences, they kind of relate to it, and these people actually become role models out there for others to be able to follow in their footsteps, to say, I can also do it and I can also aspire to being my own self. And I mean, I look at the uniqueness in each person, and I always say each one has a purpose that they can fulfill. And this is what you're doing, is making people understand through their different messages on the prayer mat, you know, their potentials to be able to fulfill that.
Exactly, and I think that's, you know, ultimately the goal that we try to achieve. And I think we've obviously have seen that through COVID-19 that, you know, there is that element of loneliness. And I think through projects like these, or like you said, even just reading something, it you know, connects it connects your heart, which I think, is helps to, helps with the loneliness.
Yeah, most definitely. I think it's a phenomenal idea to be able to go and do a docu out there, and share experiences. And I think I would say, from my point of view, people relate to these reality stories, and that's what they look for, because there are people going through similar experiences, and it entices them into a better space to say that I'm not alone. There's someone out there that had a similar experience to me, and this is how they overcame their challenges as such. And I think that's what's really going to help, is if they look at this and get inspired in that manner.
Exactly, and I think the project also dealt with, because the salah itself and just even sitting on your masala is such a vulnerable state, and I think people connect with someone else's vulnerability as well. I think it makes it easier for them, which I also couldn't anticipate, obviously before the project. So yeah, very, very special.
Most definitely, without a doubt. What would you like to leave our listeners with this afternoon? What message would you like them to be left with?
That it is actually very easy to connect with people. I found that through just the journey of creating this project, purely because I didn't know any of these owners of masalas, and it was just, reaching out to them and saying, this is what I want to do. Can you help me? But then, like we've, discussed earlier, that, even if you just sort of reach out to them, you'll actually realize how open and generous people are, which I always think is a great reminder that we should remind ourselves on the daily.
That is so true. So is your prayer mat project not going to go anywhere else where we can experience the experience besides your docu?
So at the moment, no. And that's just for, I suppose, logistical reasons. But I mean, if I don't get the grant, I will obviously have to think of a way that I can extend the project. Obviously, considering that's the downside of a documentary is that you miss out on the materiality of the masala, which I think is very important. But the flip side is that then I think anyone from around the world can experience these stories. But I'll let you know if
I think we're all looking forward to that. We are, definitely.
Yes.
What I find phenomenal is that, everyone looks at a prayer mat and think, oh, okay, it's a prayer mat. But what was so nice is that you've shed light on the matter to say, look at this thing. It's not just an object. There's so much more to it than just that.
Exactly. And again, it's I thought that people's, main stories would focus on the salah, but interestingly enough, it actually became secondary to what people took from that masala, which was, it was family, travel, and then again, connection to Allah, outside of the salah as well.
And also the messages. I mean, each one had such a unique message, and each message was so deep.
Exactly. But then there were also one of my best friends, one of the early, stories that I received in the project, she had her masala in her bag, I think when she was about 8.
Wow.
And it was in her bag, and she was at madrasa, and this other girl had like a hot chips with tomato sauce on, and that chip fell on her masala, and she hates tomato sauce. And she said ever since that day, she literally threw that masala in the washing machine and hasn't touched it since, just because she has this disgust towards tomato sauce. And I thought that was such a sweet, sort of innocent and mundane memory.
Yes.
Which was the complete opposite of other people's memories that was, very, very deep. So yeah, that I found it really
the light-hearted version of the story.
Exactly, and the stories of.
I'm sure she would like to take that musala back and use it, because the memories attached to it are so serious and so deep.
Exactly, but we'll have to see. I'll have to just maybe convince her a bit more.
Most definitely. But you know what? You're such a phenomenal human being, and we want to thank you so much. We are from the Salam Media team. We definitely wishing you nothing but the best, and hoping that all these amazing things that you would love to do to connect people together come to fruition in some way. We're definitely going to be watching that space and hoping that you, of course, achieve your ambitions. And
Thank you
we
so
want to
much.
wish you nothing but the best. But we'll, yeah, as I say, watch that space. We'll watch Aaliyah Ahmed.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and have a lovely day from myself and the team. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
That was Aaliyah Ahmed, definitely an inspiring person. What an amazing project that she came up with. Taking a prayer mat, something that we just look at as, it's our way of reconnecting with our Creator. But she's looked deeper into it and created these memories and messages, which I think was so phenomenal. And now having to look at putting a docu together to be able to bring out the essence in the prayer mat is so phenomenal. So watch that space and then let's see where she heads to. And we're hoping that she achieves that goal. We're going to go for a quick break. Stay with us. We'll be back in a bit.
It's a new